The bell over Millie's diner gave one tired jingle, and every fork in the room seemed to pause halfway to somebody's mouth. Marcus Hale did not look up right away. He kept his left hand near the white coffee mug, his right resting beside a plate of eggs, toast, and grits gone glossy with butter, while rain ticked against the front windows like thrown gravel. Across the counter, Ruth Bell's fingers tightened around a brown folder half hidden beneath a flower delivery invoice. She had been sliding it toward him an inch at a time between refills, slow enough that nobody watching from the booths would notice. Then the sheriff walked in. Earl Bannon filled the doorway with a wet tin Stetson in one hand and a smile already warmed up for a room he owned. Two deputies came in behind him, shaking rain off their shoulders, their eyes moving booth to booth before they ever looked at the menu board. "Morning, folks," Bannon called, smooth as radio static. "Coffee's on me. Long night out there keeping Bryan County decent." A few people laughed too quickly. A farmer at the end booth lowered his newspaper but did not turn the page. Ruth pulled the folder back under the counter and set the coffee pot down harder than she meant to. The glass made a sharp clack against the warmer. Marcus noticed, the way he noticed the deputy near the jukebox angling himself where he could see the front door, and the younger one pretending not to stare at Marcus's dark blue sedan parked outside beneath the dripping awning. He had arrived before sunrise with no escort, no visible badge, no driver, just a grey overcoat folded on the stool beside him and an old silver watch on his wrist, the kind his father used to wind every Sunday night at the kitchen table. Now the watch's second hand swept quietly beneath his cuff while Bannon made his rounds, touching shoulders, asking after bad knees, calling every white customer by name. When he reached the counter, he stopped behind Marcus just long enough for the silence to gather weight. "Don't believe I've had the pleasure," Bannon said. Marcus dabbed the corner of his mouth with a paper napkin. "Marcus. Marcus," Bannon repeated, tasting the name. "Passing through." Ruth turned with a mug in her hand. "Sheriff, he's just having breakfast." Bannon did not look at her. "I asked the gentleman." Marcus lifted his coffee, felt the heat through the ceramic. "I'm here for a meeting." "With who?" "Someone expecting me." A smile stayed on Bannon's face, but it lost its warmth around the edges. "Now that's a careful answer." The deputy by the jukebox shifted his boots on the old checkerboard tile. Outside, a logging truck hissed by on the wet road, and for 1 second the diner windows trembled. Bannon leaned his elbow on the counter beside Marcus's plate, close enough that the leather of his gun belt creaked. "We had ourselves a pharmacy break-in last night. Man seen near Maple and 3rd. Alone. Not from around here." Marcus finally turned and met his eyes. "Sheriff, I've been sitting here since Ruth unlocked the door." Ruth nodded once, quick. "That's right. 6 sharp." Bannon's gaze flicked to her, and whatever she saw there made her mouth close. He looked back at Marcus. "You got identification?" Marcus set the mug down carefully. "No rattle. No spill. Am I free to finish my breakfast?" The room went still enough for Marcus to hear the old silver watch ticking under his sleeve. Ben's smile flattened into a line, and he said, softly, "Stand up." Marcus looked at the plate first, at the yellow smear of yolk cooling beside the toast, then at Ruth's hand under the counter where the folder had vanished. Her knuckles were pale around the edge of a dish towel. He pushed the stool back with a soft scrape and rose slowly, palms open, coat still draped over the seat beside him. At 6'2", he stood taller than Bannon, but he kept his shoulders loose, his chin level, the way his father had taught him on a shoulder of highway outside Richmond 30 years earlier when blue lights had painted the inside of their old Buick and a trooper had called his father boy in front of his son. Don't give a small man the excuse he came looking for. The old watch pressed cool against Marcus's wrist, its silver face tucked half beneath his cuff. Bannon noticed the movement of his eyes. "Expecting somebody?" he asked. "Everybody's expecting somebody eventually," Marcus said. A cough went around the room, not quite a laugh. Bannon's jaw flexed once. He turned that campaign smile back on, bigger now, for the boots and the counter and the farmer pretending to study yesterday's sports page. See, folks, this is what makes the job hard. Simple question turns into a philosophy lesson. He lifted his voice like he was telling a story at a fish fry. A pharmacy gets hit. Miss Ellen can't open this morning because some fella decided he needed pills and cash more than she needed a front door. Then I find a stranger sitting here before daylight, giving Ruth secret looks and careful answers. There weren't any secret looks, Ruth said, but her voice came out thin. The coffee pot trembled in her hand, brown liquid licking the glass. Bannon finally faced her fully. Ruth, I thought we were past you interrupting county business. He said it gently. That made it worse. I'd hate for Mr. Pritchard from health to come by and find that freezer still running warm. Or start asking about those county fees you keep promising to settle. The napkin dispenser beside Marcus reflected Ruth's face in warped chrome, her lips pressed together until the color left them. Marcus saw a tiny scar near her thumb, flour dust in the creases of her fingers, and the corner of that brown folder just visible below the register, marked with a blue ink line. Not random. Not safe. Bannon stepped closer. His shirt smelled faintly of rain, coffee, and leather polish. Now, Marcus with no last name, where you from? Virginia. Long way from home. Not as long as it sounds. You got people in Bryan County. Marcus glanced at the wall clock above the pie case. 8:07, I'm meeting someone at 9. Bannon followed his glance, then looked at the watch on Marcus's wrist. You keep checking time like a man with somewhere to run. Or somewhere to be. The younger deputy near the jukebox shifted again, eyes dropping to the floor. Ben's smile disappeared completely now, and the diner seemed to shrink around the sound of rain ticking harder on the glass. Put your hands on the counter. Marcus did not move. Sheriff, before this goes further, I need you to answer a simple question. Bannon leaned in. You don't need anything from me. Marcus's voice stayed low, but every booth heard it. Am I being detained? For the first time, Bannon's eyes flickered, not with doubt, but with the quick irritation of a man hearing language he did not expect from the person in front of him. Then his hand dropped toward the cuffs on his belt. Bannon let his fingers rest on the cuffs a second too long, making sure everyone saw the choice hanging there. Then he pointed at the counter with 2 fingers. Hands. Marcus held his gaze, then placed both palms flat beside his plate. The laminate was sticky from spilled syrup, and a grain of salt pressed into the heel of his hand. I'll comply, he said. But I do not consent to a search. Bannon gave a soft chuckle to the room. Hear that? He'll comply. Mighty generous. He stepped behind Marcus and kicked his ankles apart with the side of his boot. The younger deputy, Caleb, looked up fast, his Adam's apple bobbing above his collar. The older deputy kept his eyes on the window, where rain ran down in crooked lines over the red neon open sign. Bannon patted Marcus's coat pockets, then his pants pockets, brisk and practiced, hard enough to make the keys on the counter jump. Weapon. No drugs. No burglary tools. Marcus turned his head slightly. Sheriff. Bannon shoved his shoulder back toward the counter. Eyes front. Ruth took one step forward. Earl, he hasn't done anything. I told you, he's been right there since 6. And I told you, Bannon said, still smiling as his hands moved over Marcus's ribs, county business works better when civilians don't coach suspects. He pulled a black government phone from Marcus's inner coat pocket and held it up. The screen stayed dark except for a small locked icon. Well now. Fancy. He tapped it with his thumb. Nothing happened. Password. No, the room inhaled. Bannon's face did not change, but his ears flushed red. He set the phone on the counter like evidence, then found a fountain pen, heavy and black with a gold clip. You write poetry with this, Marcus. A man in the back booth gave one brittle laugh and stopped when Ruth looked at him. Bannon's fingers finally closed around the old silver watch. Marcus's left hand tightened, not much, just enough for the tendons to rise under his skin. Leave the watch, Marcus said. Bannon paused. That important to you? It was my father's. Then your father should have taught you how to answer questions. Marcus's jaw set, but his voice stayed even. Sheriff, you are making a record you cannot undo. For half a second, only the rain spoke. Then Bannon moved fast. He yanked Marcus's right arm behind his back and drove him forward until the edge of the counter pressed into his hip. Ruth gasped. The coffee mug tipped, rolled against the saucer, and spilled a dark sheet across the counter toward the hidden folder below the register. Caleb took one step, then stopped when Bannon shot him a look. The first cuff snapped around Marcus's wrist with a hard metallic bite, the second followed so sharply the silverware jumped beside his plate. Bannon leaned close to Marcus's ear, his campaign voice gone low and raw. Around here, I decide what gets undone. He turned him toward the door as the bell above it trembled in the draft, and Marcus saw Ruth's hand dart beneath the counter, not for the folder, but for something taped under the register. Marcus caught only a flash of Ruth's wrist under the counter before Bannon shoved him forward, but it was enough. She peeled loose a strip of silver duct tape, and something black and flat dropped into her apron pocket. Not the folder. Something smaller. A copy, maybe. Or a key. Bannon marched him past the booths as if the diner were a courtroom and he had already won. The farmer stared into his coffee. The man who had laughed at the pen suddenly found the sugar packets fascinating. Ruth followed 2 steps, her shoes squeaking on the wet tile. Earl, she said, voice low now, no tremble in it, don't do this here. Bannon stopped with one hand on Marcus's cuffed arm and looked back over his shoulder. You want me to do it outside for your customers? I want you to remember their eyes. Something passed between them then, old and sharp. Bannon's mouth bent. Your nephew had eyes too. Didn't help him tell the truth. Ruth went still as if he had put a hand around her throat. Marcus turned his head just enough to see her face. That was the hidden bruise in the room. Not unpaid fees. Not a health inspection. A name Bannon hadn't even needed to say. Caleb looked at Ruth then, quickly, with the guilty flinch of a man who knew the story and hated his part in it. Bannon tugged Marcus toward the door. Rain hit Marcus's face cold and needling as they stepped under the awning, the smell of wet asphalt and diesel rising from the road. His dark blue sedan sat 10 yards away with water beading on the hood. Bannon noticed Marcus glance at it. That yours? Rental. Figures. He opened the rear door of the cruiser and put a palm on Marcus's head, pressing him down harder than necessary. Marcus folded himself into the back seat, cuffs biting when his shoulders met the vinyl. Through the rain-streaked glass, he saw Ruth standing in the doorway with both hands hidden in her apron pockets. Her eyes met his. She gave the smallest nod. Then Caleb blocked the view as he climbed into the passenger seat. The ride to the station took 6 minutes. Marcus counted turns, stop signs, the old courthouse clock showing 8:19, the cracked war memorial on the square, the payday loan place beside the county annex. Bannon whistled under his breath like a man driving to lunch. At the station, fluorescent lights buzzed over scuffed floors that smelled of mop water and burnt coffee. Bannon pushed Marcus toward the booking counter. Name: Marcus Hale. Caleb's pen stopped above the form. Bannon noticed. Something wrong, deputy? Caleb swallowed. No, sir. Then right. Marcus watched Caleb print the name carefully, not looking at him. There was a faded dinosaur sticker on the inside of Caleb's clipboard, half peeled, the kind a child would press there during a station visit. Marcus softened his voice. You have a son. Caleb's hand tightened around the pen. 5. Bannon slapped the counter. This ain't social hour. Marcus kept his eyes on Caleb. Then you know what it means when a boy watches a man in uniform. Caleb's face colored. Bannon leaned close to Marcus, close enough that Marcus smelled peppermint gum over coffee. You keep working, my deputy, I'll add resisting. Add whatever helps you sleep. The room cooled. Even the dispatcher behind the glass stopped typing. Bannon took the form from Caleb, scanned it, and his thumb paused on the last name. Hale. His eyes flicked to Marcus's old watch, then to the locked phone sealed in a plastic tray. Caleb, he said slowly, run him local only. No federal database. Not yet. Caleb looked up. Sheriff. Bannon's smile returned, thin as a razor. You heard me. At that exact moment, the phone in the evidence tray lit up once, silent and bright, showing a single missed check-in alert, 9:15 pending. The glow died before Bannon could read more than those 2 words, but it changed the air in the booking room. Caleb's pen hovered. The dispatcher behind the glass pretended to sort mail with hands that had gone clumsy. Bannon picked up the plastic evidence tray, turned the phone face down, and slid it toward the far end of the counter. Power it off. Caleb did not move. Sheriff, if that's government property, I said power it off. Marcus lowered his eyes to the silver watch. The second hand moved with that steady old whisper his father had loved, but beneath the scratched face, under the stem that no longer wound anything, a pinhole microphone had been drinking in every word since Millie's bell jingled at sunrise. The watch was not transmitting now, concrete walls and cheap county wiring made the signal cough in and out. But it was storing everything. Bannon's threat about Ruth's freezer. His joke about Marcus's father. The order to run him local only. The part Marcus had not expected was Caleb. In the briefing file, Deputy Caleb Morrow had been a signature on 3 bed stops and 2 cash seizures, just another name beneath Bannon's. In person, he had a dinosaur sticker on his clipboard and a face that flinched every time the sheriff lied. That made him dangerous in a different way. Marcus turned his wrist enough to wake the watch's hidden accelerometer. 1 tap against the booking counter. Then 2. A marker for the review team if they got the file intact. Bannon saw the movement and snatched Marcus's cuffed hands upward. You got a problem with that watch. The cuff scraped down. Marcus breathed once through his nose. Only that you keep noticing it. Take it off him, Bannon said. Caleb's head came up. It's cuffed under the chain. Then uncuff one hand. Sheriff, do you need me to draw you a picture? Caleb reached for his key ring, and Marcus watched the boyish tremor in his fingers. On the other side of town, past the courthouse and the rain-dark soybean fields, 3 black SUVs sat idling behind a closed-way station, wipers thumping slow. Inside the lead vehicle, Assistant Director Lena Wexler stared at a tablet showing Marcus Hale's last clean location ping frozen over Millie's diner at 8:13. Beside it, a red line counted down toward the missed 9:15 check-in. He said no visible tail, a younger agent muttered from the back seat. Wexler did not look away from the screen. He's the director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, not a tourist who missed his turn. The words sat there, heavy as the rain on the windshield. She tapped her earpiece. All units, hold until missed check-in unless the stress marker comes through. Her tablet chirped once. Not a location. Not audio. Just 3 dial pulses from the watch accelerometer, 1, 2, pause. Wexler's face hardened. Back at the station, Caleb unlocked one cuff, and Bannon reached for the silver watch with a smile that said he thought he was taking a keepsake, not evidence. Then the front desk phone rang. The dispatcher reached for it before Bannon could bark, leave it, and her voice came out too high. Bryan County Sheriff's Office. She listened, eyes sliding toward the sheriff, then toward Marcus's half-free wrist. It's Ruth Bell. Bannon's hand closed around the receiver so hard the plastic squeaked. You got business with my office, Ruth, you come through proper channels. The line crackled with diner noise behind her, the hiss of the grill, a chair scraping, rain guttering off the awning, and when Ruth spoke, the tremble was gone. Proper channels are how you buried Tyrell. Caleb's key ring stopped mid-jingle. Bannon's face changed by one small degree, a curtain moving behind a window. You watch your mouth. No, Ruth said. I did that for 2 years. Watched my mouth while my sister sold her car for lawyer money. Watched my mouth while you stood in my diner and told everybody my nephew ran because guilty boys run. He didn't run, Earl. Caleb drove him home and you wrote it up different. The booking room seemed to pull in around Caleb, even the fluorescent hum sounded louder. His thumb rubbed the little dinosaur sticker on the clipboard until its peeled corner lifted. Ruth, he said, barely more than breath. Bannon snapped his fingers in his face. Finish the cuff. Marcus kept his eyes on Caleb, not on the watch, not on the phone, not on Bannon. Ruth's voice kept coming through the receiver, small but steady. That folder you saw under my register. That wasn't the only one. The receipts from the tow yard. The county fee notices. Dash came from Deacon Price's truck when your boys emptied his offering envelopes on Route 6. Names, dates, plate numbers. I made copies every Sunday after closing, back by the flour sacks. Bannon's nostrils flared. You have no idea what you're playing with. Yes, I do, Ruth said. A marked deck. Marcus heard the phrase and remembered her fingers on the flour delivery invoice, how she had tapped twice beside the blue ink line before Bannon walked in. Not fear. Signal. At the diner, the brown folder had been the visible thing, the thing a bully would notice. The real packet had been taped under the register with the black prepaid phone and a flash drive sealed in plastic wrap against spilled coffee and grease. Ruth had not reached for courage after Marcus was dragged out. She had reached for the switch already built into the morning. If Mr. Marcus doesn't check in by 9:15, she said, the duplicate leaves my back door with the bellflower truck. Driver's a church deacon out of Larkin. He knows to stop at the old way station and ask for the woman with the red umbrella. Bannon went still. Outside the front windows, rain blurred the parking lot into grey streaks. At the abandoned way station 3 miles out, Lena Wexler looked down as her tablet flashed again, this time with a new location pin moving from Millie's rear alley toward County Road 12. She lifted 2 fingers, and engines turned over behind her in a low, synchronized growl. Back in the booking room, Bannon lowered the receiver without hanging it up. His voice came out soft, almost pleasant. Caleb, shut off the hallway camera. Caleb blinked. Sheriff, now. Then Bannon turned to the dispatcher. Call Judge Voss. Tell him I need an emergency transfer order signed in 10 minutes. Marcus finally looked at the wall clock. 8:43, Bannon smiled at him with no warmth left at all and said, looks like we're taking a ride before your friends find the road. Caleb's eyes moved from Bannon to Marcus, then to the black dome camera above the hallway door, its tiny red light shining like a coal. Rain rattled against the station windows. Somewhere in the back, a toilet ran and ran. Deputy, Bannon said, not louder, just flatter, if you make me repeat myself, you can clean out your locker before lunch. Caleb walked to the wall panel beside the evidence room. His boots sounded too loud on the scuffed tile. He opened the metal cover, hesitated with his thumb over a switch labeled Hall 2, and for 1 second Marcus saw the boy from the dinosaur sticker in him, the father who still had time to become somebody worth watching. Then the red light on the camera blinked out. Bannon exhaled through his nose. Good. He grabbed the booking sheet, crossed out Hale with 2 hard strokes, and rewrote it as Hale, Marcus, no middle initial, no date of birth. Local trespass hold, he muttered. Refused identity. Aggressive posture. The dispatcher, pale behind the glass, whispered, Sheriff, Judge Voss's clerk says he's in chambers. Then tell his clerk I still remember the lake house permits. Bannon tossed the receiver at her and turned back to Marcus. Your friends are headed to a flour truck on County Road 12. That road floods at the creek bridge when a frog spits. Shame if they get stuck chasing church gossip. He took the silver watch from Caleb's shaking hand and dropped it into the evidence tray beside the phone, then paused, looking at Marcus as if waiting for a crack in his face. Marcus gave him none, but inside his chest something tightened. The watch was no longer on his wrist. The phone was dark. The folder was moving through rain on a back road Bannon already knew. For the first time that morning, the plane had holes big enough to drive a cruiser through. Bannon saw the silence and smiled. There he is. Finally thinking. Caleb kept his head down, but Marcus spoke to him, low enough that it didn't sound like a speech. One day your son will ask what kind of man you were when it mattered. Caleb's throat worked. Bannon stepped between them and slapped Caleb's chest with the folded transfer form the dispatcher had just slid through the slot. The judge's signature was wet enough to shine. He'll tell his son he kept his job. He unlocked one side of Marcus's cuffs only to wrench both hands behind him again, tighter this time, and pushed him toward the rear hallway where the dead camera stayed blind. The air back there smelled of bleach, damp concrete, and old sweat. A holding cell door clanged open. Marcus caught a glimpse of the wall clock through the booking room window, 8:58. 17 minutes to the missed check-in. Maybe less before Wexler hit the washed-out bridge. Bannon shoved him inside and leaned close to the bars. By 9:15, you'll be halfway to a county facility with no visitors log and no working phones. By noon, Ruth Bell will remember her freezer problem. By supper, this town will swear you swung at me. Caleb stood behind him, face gray, transfer form crumpling in his fist. Then the dispatcher called from the front, voice breaking over a new sound outside, the low rumble of engines that did not belong to any county cruiser. Sheriff, you need to see this. Bannon held Marcus by the arm for one beat, listening. The engines outside rolled closer, deep and even, not the rattling cough of county cruisers. He yanked the cell door open so hard it bounced off the block wall. Move. Marcus stepped out, wrists cuffed behind him, shoulders damp from the rain that had dried into a chill under his grey overcoat. Caleb followed with the transfer paper crushed in his fist. At the front of the station, every face had turned toward the windows. 3 black SUVs sat in the lot with their headlights burning white through the rain. Behind them, a flower delivery truck idled crooked near the curb, its back door streaked with road mud. Ruth stood beside it under a red umbrella, apron still on, jaw set like she had finally run out of fear. 2 men from the diner stood behind her, one holding a phone up with both hands. Bannon saw the phones first. Then the windbreakers. Yellow letters across black fabric, FBI. He pushed Marcus ahead of him anyway, louder now, performing for the room. Well, look at that, he called. Ruth brought herself a parade. The front door opened, letting in cold rain and the smell of wet leaves. Assistant Director Lena Wexler stepped inside, water beading on her short grey hair, 6 agents fanning out behind her with the quiet precision of people who did not need to raise their voices. Bannon laughed once, sharp and ugly. What, this your church group? Wexler did not look at him. She walked straight to Marcus, stopped an arm's length from the cuffed black man Bannon had dragged in from breakfast, and her voice cut clean through the room. Director Hale, are you injured? The sound left the station. Even the buzzing lights seemed to quit. Bannon's hand loosened on Marcus's sleeve. His eyes moved from Wexler to Marcus, then to the evidence tray behind the desk where the locked government phone and old silver watch sat under a plastic tag marked Hale. Director, he said, but it came out dry, almost childlike. Marcus lifted his cuffed wrist slightly. Deputy Morrow has the key. Caleb stared at him, breathing through his mouth. Then he stepped forward, hands shaking, and fitted the key into the cuffs. The metal clicked open. Marcus rubbed one wrist where the steel had left a red line, then turned to Bannon. He did not smile. Sheriff, you were warned. Wexler held up a folded document. Earl Bannon, federal warrants have been issued for this station, your evidence room, your official communications, and all records connected to county fee collections and civil forfeiture activity. Bannon took one step back. This is my office. Not anymore, Wexler said. An agent behind the counter lifted the silver watch from the tray with gloved hands and connected a small cable to a tablet. Static crackled. Then Bannon's own voice filled the station, tinny but clear, then your father should have taught you how to answer questions. Ruth flinched under the umbrella outside. The recording jumped forward. Run him local only. No federal database. Not yet. Caleb shut his eyes. Another click, another line. By supper, this town will swear you swung at me. A murmur broke from the diner witnesses in the doorway, low and furious. Bannon's face drained to the color of wet paper. He looked toward the rear hallway camera, dead and useless, then at Caleb, who had stopped shaking. The deputy reached slowly into his shirt pocket and pulled out a tiny memory card tucked behind the half-peeled dinosaur sticker from his clipboard. There's more, Caleb said, voice rough. And it's not all on the watch. Wexler turned her palm upward, and Caleb placed the memory card in it like it weighed more than his badge. I copied the hallway feed before I killed the camera, he said, eyes fixed on the floor. And the traffic stop files. The cache logs too. Bannon lunged one step toward him, but two agents moved between them before his boots finished scraping the tile. You ungrateful enough, Marcus said, and the word landed flat and final. Outside, Ruth lowered the red umbrella just enough for rain to bead along the edge and drop onto her apron. She walked in carrying the brown folder, the corners soft from years of being opened and closed in secret. This is the original, she told Wexler. Tyrell's paperwork is on top. Her voice caught on the name, but she did not look away from Bannon. My nephew was 19. He missed 2 semesters because you needed a story to cover a bad stop. Caleb swallowed hard. I drove him home, he said. Like she said. I was scared to say it then. Ruth looked at him for a long second, rainwater tapping from her umbrella onto the station floor. Then say it now where it counts. He nodded once. Wexler's agents moved through the room with quiet speed, sealing drawers, photographing the evidence tray, taping boxes from the records closet. One warrant went to the evidence room. One to county finance. One to Judge Voss's chambers, where the wet signature on Marcus's transfer order was already being sealed in plastic. Bannon kept saying, call the county attorney, then, you don't have jurisdiction, then nothing at all when an agent recited the charges and took his gun from his belt. The cuffs clicked on his wrists with a smaller sound than Marcus expected. No thunder. No speech. Just metal and breath and the rain tapping the glass. As they led him past the doorway, the diner witnesses stepped aside, phones still raised, but nobody cheered. Ruth only watched the cruiser he had arrived in sit empty by the curb, its light bar dark. By late afternoon the clouds had turned to a dull silver, and Millie's diner smelled of fresh coffee, bacon grease, and lemon cleaner where Ruth had scrubbed the counter twice. Marcus sat on the same stool, grey overcoat folded beside him, the old silver watch back on his wrist with a fresh evidence tag looped through the band until Wexler could take custody of the recording. You came alone because you wanted to see him without a warning label, Ruth said, setting down eggs, toast, and grits hot enough to steam. Marcus picked up his fork. I came without a visible tail, he said. There's a difference. Ruth huffed, almost a laugh, and slid the check face down under his saucer. Breakfast is on the house, Director. Marcus, he said. She looked at the empty place under the register where the black phone had been taped. Then breakfast is on the house, Marcus. Through the front window, a tow truck hooked onto Bannon's cruiser, chains clinking in the wet street, while Caleb stood across the square with his little boy's dinosaur sticker pressed between 2 fingers, waiting to give his statement. Marcus cut into his eggs, but before he took a bite, he rested his fingertips on the watch's scratched silver face. His father's watch had kept time through insult, fear, and a morning bell to break smaller men. Now it ticked softly beside a white coffee mug, while the bell over Millie's diner gave one tired jingle and, this time,